Today, I wanted to chat a little bit about social proof. Reputation is almost more important for brands these days than it ever has been. Social proof, it just makes a first-time customer that much more comfortable when making a purchase, and it helps tenfold over things like a flashy new graphic or sometimes even offers. Test different reviews from different people and different vantage points because you never know what is going to work. Brands with the best social proof and the best sort of net promoter scores, one of the biggest things they have in common is I love working with Pilot House because while we are a performance marketing agency, we really pride ourselves on caring so much about brand and creative. At Pilot House, we don't just make ads, we craft them. Every edit, every word, every scroll-stopping detail is built with purpose and care, and I truly believe that care drives creativity and creativity drives results. Our attention to both scale and brand allows us to craft strategies that deliver you short-term results while making you long-term successful, which is so important for any DTC brand. If you are curious about learning more about working with Pilot House, you can fill out a lead form at pilothouse.co and let them know you want to go on a brand new ad venture. You don't actually have to say that. You don't have to make a pun. I'm not going to force you to make a pun. Just fill out the lead form. We'd love to chat with you. Hi, welcome back to Ad-venturous, the podcast produced by DTC and hosted by me, Aves. Today, I wanted to chat a little bit about social proof and how we can leverage social proof better in ads to really help boost performance, especially at the top of the funnel. Reputation, very important, both in the context of building a brand and also in the context of Taylor Swift's discography. It's a great record. I won't lie. I love that album. But yeah, weirdly enough, I do think reputation is almost more important for brands these days than it ever has been. I think that what people say about your brand matters a lot. And so I really did want to talk about how to leverage social proof to help you not only build a brand, but also help sort of take down NCAC numbers at the very top of the funnel, help really explore, again, just how to leverage it in different sort of facets of your ads, and yeah, just make it work for you. I think that what's so interesting about social proof these days and how brands are built, it's that back in the day, which is not that long ago, you used to have a lot more in-person experience with a product before you actually purchased it, or you would have social proof in the way of like, I can't remember, I guess like Macy's or Sears would put together a catalog of things around the holidays and people would like flip through, pick products, but you had some sort of security in purchasing from those because they were in the catalog, so it must be a legitimate business. But nowadays, everyone starts a DTC brand at some point in their lives, it feels like. So there's like less trust out there because there's so many more businesses and brands because the barrier to entry is so much lower than it used to be in terms of actually starting a business and a brand. D2C has really shifted the way that people are able to, get out there and sell a product to us. So social proof is really more important than ever because we've lost different sort of institutions. Thinking again about the call it to like in-person experiences, like the mall. If you were physically at the mall and holding something, then you're just a lot more likely to buy it than if you see a picture of it on the internet. I think also with the rise of generative AI, people are getting more and more skeptical. There's also always a lot of scams out there. Classic Instagram brands, as I feel like we used to call them. Maybe we don't anymore. There's like Temu evidence that, what you purchase, what you see isn't always what you get. So yeah, people are just a lot more skeptical these days and a lot less willing to try a new brand because obviously there's a lot of sort of room for things to fall through when you are ordering things off of the internet, which again, it just means social proof is so much more important. I think also something to remember as we're talking about social proof and how it helps you build a brand. At the end of the day, you are still just that, a brand, you are a business. So while reputation is important, it's also starkly different than people who build like a personal brand or even just out in the wild, real life reputation from human to human. I think you want people to respect your product, enjoy your marketing, but they don't need to love you as they might with an actual human being. That's like the really big difference here that I think it's important to be conscious of, because I do see some brands that come through that I chat with, audit, and they have a lot of hangups around how they want to interact with people because they're very nervous about how they're being perceived. But again, remember, you just kind of need people to have a good experience with the product and your marketing, and you're good to go as long as you don't say anything really crazy or offensive, which you shouldn't be doing in the first place. Also, I feel like before we get into this episode, I would like to rant about personal brand because it's been really annoying me lately and the way that people use it. And this is my podcast, not yours. That's a reference to my favorite YouTube series, with Trixie Mattel and Katya. But yeah, I feel like personal brand is a really weird one and one that I don't really like to, I guess, touch. I think it's like eroding everyone's ability to be cool and chill on the internet, and I'm so sick of it. This is kind of inspired by, I've just started posting again from like personal accounts, and one of those platforms is TikTok. Well, actually, really the only platforms that I post on as myself, not a brand, are LinkedIn and TikTok. And the concept of approaching that as like a personal brand is really wild to me. It's like only been 3 weeks of posting on TikTok and just a few months, I guess, of posting on LinkedIn. And yeah, I took an 8-year hiatus from any personal social media. And coming back, it's so interesting to note the difference in how people behave as just regular citizens on the internet. Like, I like to post things that are fun or funny to me and also like might be helpful in the way of marketing because I do have a lot of experience there. And I couldn't imagine putting all of that through this like weird lens of like, what is my personal brand? I don't know about that. I think it just, yeah, it doesn't make it fun anymore. I don't want to like think about what I put on LinkedIn or TikTok. I just want to make a video and then upload it. If that's a hot take, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of like conversation around crafting things for the algorithm and how to do personal brands successfully. And it really freaks me out because I'm not a brand, but a person. And I also think really weird, stupid, silly stuff is funny. So that's what I'm going to post because that reflects me. I think that's my whole rant. Yeah, I'm gonna pull the plug there on myself. That's my whole rant on personal brand. Just post for fun. Unless, you're doing it on behalf of a brand. Just have a good time out there. It's two starkly different experiences. And now as someone who's like actively doing both, I can assure you they are very different things to post on a personal account versus a brand account. So you might as well just have fun. I think both are really fun, but that's just me. I've also maybe had too many coffees before recording this podcast, so that's also just me. Back to this episode, which is about social proof. Let's start with just sort of defining it. What is it? What does it mean in this day and age to have good social proof or any social proof? One of the very first episodes we did of Ad-venturous was about a message box, which is a tool most often deployed in political campaign planning. So social proof from a brand point of view, if we put it in the context of a message box, is them on us. What do people say about us? What has been built? What do they think of your products? What do they think of the way that you go out there and you interact with people? How do people sort of regard both your brand and your product? That is the entire crux of what social proof is. Social proof comes from kind of getting out there and doing stuff, if that makes sense. So actually having products sold, actually producing content that lives on organic and on paid. You don't get any social proof if you don't do anything. Obviously, you also won't really get any sales. And so basically social proof just develops over time as people start to get to know you and your product. Basically, if you want to hack for building good social proof on your brand, just be nice and kind of funny and also sell a product worth buying. It is literally that simple, but obviously there are a lot of businesses out there who do not tick all of those boxes, but you don't have to overthink it. Like I said in the intro, you are not a person, and building good social proof as a brand is literally just those things. Have fun and educational marketing material and also a product that is worth buying. It's very simple to have good social proof. To take things though a little bit further, I do want to talk about layering in sort of comment and community moderation to help you actually build good social proof, because it does really matter and it does make an impact. And I think brands with the best social proof and the best sort of net promoter scores, meaning people are going out there and spreading the word about a brand in real life that they found on the internet, which is huge, a huge accomplishment. I think those brands, one of the biggest things they have in common is that they are paying attention to comments and they're interacting with people before they're even in the funnel and making purchases. This is a really important distinction, I think, because it's easy to be nice to people who give you money, but it does take a little bit of extra labor and work to be nice to people who are just orbiting the brand. So what I mean by that is it's super simple to send out a cute, kind email after someone makes a purchase. Perfect flow, easy to set up. But it does, like I said, it just takes more labor to actually get in there in the comment section and respond to people in a way that is branded and fun and invites them into the fold. I think that also not focusing that work on driving conversions, but instead building social proof and building brand identity is the way to go. If you're just in the comment section as a salesperson, it sort of turns people off in my experience. So really making sure that you've got someone monitoring comments, getting in there when applicable, making jokes, and really again, just having a good time with the community that you're building. That's going to help you get faster social proof. And it's also probably going to lead to a stronger community around your business, which always a good thing. So I'd say on all platforms and also across paid and organic, interaction is really key to both delivery, but also this idea of social proof and brand building. Having a really consistent voice that's interacting with people, it's a nice, really big chunk of icing on top of the customer experience cake, if that makes sense. And again, don't be overly earnest. You're not there to make friends. You are there as a brand. Everybody knows that. It's kind of like that scene in Toy Story sometimes where Woody is like, "You are a toy," to Buzz. I feel like that at certain times talking to brands about their identity and how they interact with their community, because again, you don't need to be their best friend. You are a brand. They know that. You should know that. And you should sort of govern yourself accordingly when you are in the comments. So why leverage social proof? What does it even matter? If people are leaving good reviews, can't we just assume that net new customers are going to come in, click the PEP, and see it? No, we shouldn't assume that. We should never assume anyone is clicking on our ads and getting to the PDP. But why leverage social proof is a really good question, because I think sometimes some brands feel like it's a little bit authentic to lead with social proof and ads. I don't really know where that anxiety comes from, but it's really, like I said, important for e-commerce brands in this day and age to be cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of sketchy brands on the internet. And also, this is a different way of shopping. I guess previously we had the home shopping network, but again, that was governed by a body that would make sure the products they were showing were legitimate. They might not have worked, and they might have only solved very niche problems. Thinking about a Snuggie, I guess, they weren't really legitimate products to buy, but you knew that you would get something in the mail that was pretty closely represented by what you saw in that ad. Nowadays, like I said, it is the Wild West. Anyone can start a DTC brand and anyone can do kind of whatever they want on the internet. So there is a higher guard that most people have, and that's why social proof is so much more important now. And it's so much more important to be tactful in the ways that you weave social proof into your marketing efforts, especially sort of your new customer acquisition efforts, whether that be on Meta, TikTok Shop, wherever you're doing a bulk of that sort of pulling people into your world and your brand. You really want to make sure that you're thinking about social proof in, like I said, a very tactful way. Social proof, it just makes a first-time customer that much more comfortable when making a purchase, and it helps tenfold over things like a flashy new graphic or sometimes even offers. It's so important. I don't want to undersell social proof, which I guess I'm not doing because I'm making a whole podcast episode about it. And I really don't think we need to get into like the psychology of why social proof works, because it's pretty simple. If you see someone else buy something you're interested in and they have a nice experience and they love the product, then you're probably going to just be encouraged to buy that same product yourself. It is super simple stuff. And the great thing about social proof is that it's one of those natural, just sort of occurring things in your business, which for me, as someone who lives and breathes content, it means that it keeps me on my toes, but it also keeps the ideas in how I inject it into ads really fresh, because you never know what type of comment someone is going to leave. You never know what type of review you're going to get or image of your product in use. So social proof kind of challenges you, I think, as an advertiser to figure out how to integrate really cool things that your customers are doing and saying about the product. It also, sneak peek for how to sort of leverage it in ads that I'll get to in just a few minutes, it can really help you with messaging around back in stock or specific USPs. It can also really help when you're launching a product. If you have a lot of requests for something or a specific colorway, it can add to the sort of excitement of that. But I am getting ahead of myself. I will start with some very simple ad styles to test if you are looking to inject more social proof into your ad library, which I think we should all be doing all of the time. All right, let's get into some really simple ad styles and sort of ad types around social proof and how you can sort of get these going like ASAP. Canva, at the time of recording this, is down, but you could maybe get them up and running as soon as Canva is working, or if you use something else, good for you. You didn't get the day off like so many social media managers and content creation girlies did. But anyway, again, back to these ad styles. First one is building sort of classic, I talk about this style of content a lot, but really classic branded overlays. A big shout out I do all the time is that you want to make sure you have really polished photography that is conductive to this type of ad style. So what I mean by that is you want to make sure you have photography that is cognizant of negative space, and you want to make sure you have someone working on that photography who understands how that content is going to be deployed in ads. I think that's something really cool about working at Pilot House is we've got an in-house studio. It is actually a very good friend of mine, Riley. Shout out to Riley, who kind of heads up our studio photography, and he is incredible. Him and I have worked together, actually. We recently onboarded a brand, and I really wanted to just do a photo shoot for them because I thought that they needed more imagery like what I am describing. And so him and I went into the studio, and we spent the day capturing this photography exactly. It was really fun. I modeled it. We put on some fun tunes, but again, we were able to tie it back to exactly what we needed to do with it, which was use it for ads. And so having that special performance focused touch on your studio content creation, it really does make a difference, because a lot of the time, like I referenced before, I do talk about these very simple, very polished overlays and how they work in a lot of different cases. So yeah, if you don't currently have a way to like source this type of photography, or you haven't really gotten to it, like I said, we've got our own in-house studio and we work hand in hand with the teams who run the account. So it just works really seamlessly. If you're interested in looking at our photography or seeing what a shoot with us would look like, definitely head over to the Pilot House website and you can fill out a lead form there. Really easy to do, super simple. And if you say that you came from this podcast, we can talk directly, which is really fun. Usually I will let you know I book those calls for like 30 minutes and we almost always go over because I just have so much fun like digging into an ad library and a brand. But anyway, that was the quick spiel on getting that photography. Back to the actual review style. Once you have that really clean photography that really takes into account everything you need to run it as an ad, it's a really great place to start testing reviews. And so you as a brand might get a review that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside because you operate this business, and the person leaving the review might hit exactly on the pain points that you were hoping to solve, and you just feel so delighted when you read that review. The chances are that is not the review that is going to drive conversions. I hate to tell you, a lot of the times it's something else that actual customers and net new users want to see about your your product. And so what I recommend doing is setting up a test where you are looking at sort of 4 distinctive reviews. And how I try to think about this, especially when I'm working with a new brand, is say by the way, I am once again in that moment where I'm trying to think of an example and I am looking across my desk to see what is there. There's a lip gloss. So we're going with lip gloss today. Say you were selling a lip gloss and you've gotten enough reviews now and you've gotten this really great photography that takes into account ad usage. Maybe you shot it with us at Pilot House. Everything is fun. Everything is chill. So you've got this photography, you've got your reviews coming in. And what I would recommend doing is bucketing that initial test into different types of USPs. So you might look at your reviews and just see a lot of positive ones that say like, this lip gloss doesn't get sticky. Instead of testing an initial batch of like 5 versions of a very polished overlay and they all talk about the same USP, break it apart and really do some digging and find reviews that speak to different features. This feels really simple as a tip, but it actually is really fundamental in building an ad library centered around social proof that actually gets people to make a purchase or click through on your ad. So say one of the reviews is about the lip gloss being long lasting, one is about it not being sticky, the other is about the pigment, and the last one is about the packaging being really easy to use and easy to open. All of those are so distinct and different. And I want to caution you against assuming that the USP that works the best in non-social proof ads is going to be the one that works the best in review-based ads. Usually that's not the case. It's usually something that is maybe a little bit different than the sort of main USP that brings people into the fold. The reason for that is typically social proof driven ads are going to perform the best at the middle and bottom of funnel, meaning they perform the best with audiences who are already a little bit warm and not necessarily like net new freezing cold traffic. They've warmed up a little bit. They've maybe been on the site. Those are the people that tend to have the biggest reaction to social proof, because if you think about it, it makes a ton of sense with what we've been talking about. So if I see an ad for the lip gloss that says super pigmented, lasts all day, that is maybe the like headline 1,000 feet in the air view looking down at the lip gloss, and that is really exciting to me. I go on the website, I poke around for a while, get choice paralysis, and I bounce. If the next time I'm scrolling, I see an ad that focuses on a review that mentions that the lip gloss is not sticky, boom. That is a whole other point of entry that I hadn't even really considered. The really cool thing about building social proof into your ad library, especially when you start to think about it as a middle and bottom of funnel driver, is that you can really use it to start telling the story of the full product, because you can't really do that in your initial touch point, and you shouldn't try, because people's attention spans are like nilch. I know, because I am people. So you really want to make sure that you are diversifying messaging. I hope that makes sense. That was a very long point, but I think it's really important to get across, is that maybe your review shouldn't center around the same thing that's really cranking for you at the very top of the funnel, because you want to just be giving people a fuller picture of what the actual product is. So that's the first sort of ad type. You can also just add a review overlay to anything. So the static imagery usually works very well, but it also works really well to throw it on top of some UGC, especially short form video. I will not talk to you all about short form video again. I feel like every single week I'm on this podcast just talking about the importance of short form video and B-roll. But it stands true. If you find that it's working really well with polished photography, it's probably going to work really well with like short form video or different sort of more humanized applications. And it helps to, again, just expand that actual diversity in your ad library, which we've talked about before is so, so important. So that's sort of the first step in starting to add reviews into the mix. The next one is review counts. So this one is really important as well. If you're a brand who's really up and coming, to say 500 5-star reviews is like a really big accomplishment, or more than that, obviously, or even less than that. Any amount of reviews is a pretty good amount, unless it's like under 100, then not really worth saying. But adding those, especially when you start to get really positive, hopefully that's the case with your business. Once you start to get overwhelmingly positive sentiment too, adding that in, even just as a tagline on other ads, is very helpful. So if you've got winners that are working really well at the very top of the funnel, I would suggest just in small subheadline copy, adding X amount of 5-star reviews. Like I said, it's really helpful, and it just helps sort of address a bit of conversion friction really easily and build a little bit of social proof, even if it's not the headline in the ad. The third sort of pillar here under reviews or product sold is in fact just product sold. It's another really great testament to the brand if you can say like over 1 million sold. Oh my goodness, if over 1 million people have purchased this thing is probably pretty good, is usually what people will think when they see that. So the same styles are really relevant, really polished overlays, short form videos, really simple things where the angle and the sort of data in this case itself is doing most of the legwork in the ad. You don't want to overwhelm people with like a really busy piece of creator content where they're speaking and then add an overlay with the review on top of that. It's just too much. Like I said, attention spans are short. No one can really intake all of that info. So really make sure that when you are pairing reviews with ad styles and sort of background imagery and video, that you're keeping it really simple so that the review or the count of reviews or the product sold, that's really doing most of the legwork, because that should be the focus of those ads. And the other thing I'll mention again one more time, because I think it's really important, is just to test different reviews from different people in different vantage points, because you never know what is going to work, especially in that sort of middle and bottom of funnel area where you want to be leveraging that space specifically to tell a different story to help back up what was in the very top of the funnel. The next style or sort of bucket of social proof you can leverage in ads I want to talk about is how to use it for demand generation specifically. So start to keep a folder of comments. That is a very important part of this that is like just kind of basic housekeeping, but have somewhere that you store all of your really good comments. Reviews obviously are just going to live on your website. They're going to live in Shopify, but organic or paid media specific comments, when you see one that's really good, screenshot it. And then, I typically blur out people's profile picture as well as their names, use it there just for privacy. But yeah, start like when you see them, snap a quick screenshot of them, because that is the only way to really manage all of this. And then I also break down those folders into the buckets I've talked about. So if I'm looking at reviews, I'll bucket those into like what the person is reviewing. So the lip gloss example, if it's like the packaging, stickiness, whatever, within the folder of comments, I will bucket it into different types. And one of those types is back in stock, or sort of people asking when something is going to be back in stock. You should answer them, of course. But the really cool thing about these is it shows that there is demand for your product, and it shows it in a really real way, instead of you going on the internet and saying, hey, people really like this thing and they're hoping we bring it back in stock. That can feel a little bit disingenuous, and especially when it's just coming from the branded account, it doesn't feel that legit. But if you're able to back that up with a bunch of comments that people have left on posts saying like, when is this coming back? I love this colorway, please bring it back. That is actually grounds for real demand generation. And it's really fun to, especially on the organic side, start playing with that type of comment when you're teasing a product coming back in stock, because then you're adding urgency to that restock and it will probably sell out even faster. This is something I've done a lot, sort of working with these like 8+ figure brands who do a lot of limited edition drops. This is a really common strategy to make sure that we capture all of those pieces of feedback and comments, and then we leverage them later on to make sure that we are selling out each drop faster and faster and faster and faster. It is very fun. And yeah, like I said, it just feels a lot more genuine than you as a brand saying like, whoa, everyone really likes this thing. Trust us. That doesn't read as really being very genuine or authentic, even if it is. The next kind of variation of demand generation through social proof is for product launches. So I've worked with a couple of brands, and I've worked with a couple of brands on product development specifically. And I love using comment sections for product development. I have talked about this before. I came from the world of political strategy and communications, and I saw people drop a lot of money on tests to see what people liked and what people didn't like. And the coolest thing about being a marketer in this day and age is that we no longer have to do that. I have a feeling in like the Mad Men days, which by the way, I still have never seen. And at this point, I refuse to see it because people at my workplace keep telling me that I should watch that show, but it's like too long. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I think it's the coffee. People are telling you exactly what they want to see from a product development standpoint. And it is very fun to be able to deliver on that and to create those products, especially at scale, which I've gotten to do. But it's really a neat part of the current media landscape when it comes to being a marketer, that you can sort of straight from the horse's mouth find out what your customers actually want you to build next. And I think being able to leverage that into ads in demand generation situations down the pipe after you've developed that product, it shows that you also are a brand that really cares about your community and your customers rather than forwarding your own agenda and producing products that you like and you think are going to do well. Having your ear to the actual ground is a huge strategic advantage. And I have seen brands sort of ignore this. And I think it's a big mistake because, like I said, it's straight from the horse's mouth. You don't have to pay for that market research. And also, it just strengthens the bond that you have as a brand with those customers. So back to the lip gloss example, if there were a ton of people begging for a bright orange lip gloss and My Fake Lip Gloss brand made that, then we can lead with those comments because, again, instead of just going on the internet and saying, people have been begging us to make an orange lip gloss, a very bright orange lip gloss, to actually be able to go on the internet and have receipts and say, people have literally been asking us to do this. Here it is. It makes a really good first impression, even with net new customers, because then again, it shows, oh my gosh, they're listening. How cool is that? And they're producing products that people actually want to see and actually want to purchase. To be able to do that as a brand takes an incredible amount of agility when it comes to actual product development. And it's gotten more and more difficult this year, I think, for a lot of brands with the tariffs. But yeah, it is a really fun thing to be able to do. And like I said, it works really well at the top of funnel because there is some sort of backup, I guess, but you do have the receipts. The only way I can think to phrase it is receipts. That is how much time I spend on the internet, and that is my age category. But you've got the receipts to prove it, that people genuinely do want this thing you've created. And I think it's a really, it's just a fun way to exist as a brand. And it's also, like I mentioned, very smart. When people tell you advice, you should listen to it. I think one of my mentors told me that one time, and very good friends, and I was probably too young to hear it and thought it was really stupid. And now, guess what? I listen to any and all advice I can get because it's always helpful, and I don't know anything. That was the podcast for today. That was all about social proof and how to leverage it in different areas of your ad library. I wouldn't limit yourself to those sort of buckets and ideas, but I would also, again, be cautious that we're not overusing social proof and that we're being really strategic about where we're using it in the funnel. Something I didn't really talk about on the episode today, but I can go into more detail later, is how to use social proof in a post-click context, because that is where you can really have a lot of fun. Not that making ads with social proof isn't fun, but I just think both of them are quite different because, ads that don't contain social proof tend to work pretty well, whereas landing pages that don't have any reviews on them, that is really scary. I have seen it in my time auditing brands. And it's like, where are the reviews? And they have a bunch of reviews sitting in some kind of thing like Yopto, and they're just not putting them on the website. It's really weird. Never do that. If you don't have reviews on your PDP right now, call me directly because that's really scary to me. But yeah, anyway, it's a really different beast incorporating social proof, reviews, anything of that nature onto PDPs, websites in general. So really important that you think about them differently because like I said, not all ads need to have some kind of social proof in them, but all web experiences should. I also think something I'll mention now that I didn't mention during the full episode when we were talking about comments is how important it is to allow comments to do some of your job for you. And something that is really irritating about the way Meta functions is that it is very difficult to switch out your destination links on an ad. This is something I've talked about before, but at Pilot House, we do use a proprietary tool. It's called Warp Drive. So we are able to switch the links on the back end of specific ads. I think that if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I didn't mention this because it is so second nature to me now, and I forget that not everyone has access to this tool. But anyway, we use a tool called Warp Drive. It allows us to switch up the destination of an ad without resetting the learnings and without losing all of the comments and that juicy, juicy social proof. So that is a huge unlock. Like I said, I think I'm so spoiled and used to it that I didn't mention it earlier when I was talking about comments, but it is a huge strategic advantage for all of the reasons I've laid out in this episode. Comments and social proof and what people think about your brand, it really does matter. And so it is so buns when you want to say, take a top performing ad that has a lot of great social proof and switch it to a sale page. We're coming into Black Friday season, which is like all of November. So if you want to add a sale page there, it is truly buns to have to reset your learnings and lose all the social proof on that ad. Really cool that we're able to use Warp Drive and just slip in the landing page we want people to go to. And we can also test different page experiences, which I have talked about on the podcast before. Really cool, really big strategic advantage, like I mentioned. And you don't lose that social proof, which, as we've discussed today, is very important in this day and age. If we could go back to the days of Sears or Macy's catalogs, I would love that, but we can't. We're here, we all shop on the internet, and it is just very important to include any kind of testimonials and social proof and comments in all functions and areas of your marketing funnel. So that was a last minute detour before we wrapped up the episode. But yeah, that's the episode. I hope it helped. If you want to be super generous, you can leave some social proof on this podcast in the form of a comment or a review. It always helps. So wherever you listen to your podcast, just drop a subscription. If you have any subjects as well, it has only just occurred to me how much I talk on a weekly basis about marketing and how often it is to do a podcast every single week. So if you have any ideas for things that you want to hear about or any subject matters that you're curious about, let me know, because if not, I'm just going to continue to do episodes about different types of milk and their advertising, which is kind of a spoiler for next week. I'm looking at a brand that makes an alternative milk, and I'm having a lot of fun, as I did with the Got Milk ad. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys next week where we will detail a different type of milk, because that is, for some reason, my one true passion in this life: milk.